This video was brought to you by Surfshark VPN. You can't stop Black Friday madness, but you can stop people from spying on you. It's basically the same thing. In the modern world, surveillance, limitation, and data mining are everywhere. Most folks aren't even aware of it happening. Wake up, sheep. What the hell do you think the elf on the shelf is? But with Surfshark VPN, you do have an easy one-for-all solution. On Windows, Android, or Apple products, whatever drains your bank faster with a click of a button, Surfshark turns you into an anonymous and hard-to-track user, giving you more freedom on the internet, keeps you away from prying eyes, and prevents companies from doing things like geo-blocking, where video and streaming services limit your library simply because of where you live. Surfshark makes all of that a non-issue though. Start up their service, choose your location, refresh the page, and there you go, your favorite show that you couldn't watch because you dared to live somewhere else. Now why would you do such a thing, huh? And those that use the link in the description below and enter the special code Johnny will not only get 83% off their initial order, but the next 4 months are also completely free. 'Tis the season. Thanks to Surfshark VPN for the sponsor, and as always, thank you for helping support this channel. Now let's continue on with the show. Alright, the one game I was looking forward to revisiting the most amongst every other game I've looked at for this marathon. For all of you senior citizens that have been with me when this game originally came out in 2010, you might remember me absolutely despising this game with every fiber of my being. This game pissed me off as a Metroid fan, as a Samus fan. It struck just about every negative chord within my very soul, and afterwards I wanted nothing to do with it. I remember even going as far as thinking, this Yoshio Sakamoto doesn't know what he's doing, get me the original creators back for the next one. Completely ignoring that Yoshio Sakamoto has been with the franchise since the very beginning and now just being a young, ignorant dipshit. In fact, let's get this out of the way now. There are still plenty of things I dislike about Other M, as I'll get into soon enough. But looking back, compared to other games Sakamoto was involved in, Other M, now more than ever, feels like an honest-to-God misstep on Sakamoto's behalf that sure will probably leave a permanent blemish on his otherwise incredibly solid resume, but in the end, it should just remain a blemish, a reminder of what happens when a creator gets too ambitious to the point where even your teammates think you're being a little much. He fucked up, but he learned from it, I think so anyway. And now that we have Samus Returns, Dread, and the upcoming Metroid Prime 4 in the docket, I think he legitimately wants to make amends and restore people's faith in him regarding the Metroid series. That said, we still have to talk about Other M today, the lead up to it, my anticipation for it, all that good shit. So let's begin. 2010 was a good year for Nintendo Wii fans. We had the second Super Mario Galaxy, Sonic got Sonic Colors, Donkey Kong made his return, and the second No More Heroes title dropped in, but out of all those, Metroid Other M was my most anticipated release. This wasn't a first-person adventure like the Prime series, it was a third-person action-adventure title with Team Ninja behind the wheel. And Team Ninja, yeah, I'm sure a lot probably thought, boobies. But I was also like, oh shit, the Ninja Gaiden devs? I never played the 3D titles, but I was more than aware of their positive reception. Okay, cool. This might be one of the most kinetic Metroids released so far. But yeah, Team Ninja instead of Nintendo R&D 1, the ones responsible for every mainline 2D Metroid game up to this point. But Sakamoto wanted to give another team a go given R&D 1's lack of experience in 3D titles. Metroid Other M though would spend about 3 years in development. This was not only a game heavily focused on action, but the production values of the story and presentation was the highest to ever grace the series. This was like the Metal Gear of Metroid games, a title not only presenting a story right out of a feature-length film, but a story that would finally go into Samus Aran as a character, who she was as a person, a bounty hunter, and her upbringing. That was the intent anyway. Whether they succeeded is ultimately up to you. I don't think it did, but I'm just me. Metroid Other M was Yoshio Sakamoto's baby, and he wanted to make sure it was everything according to his vision, and you better fucking believe that came with some caveats. Despite getting Team Ninja involved in creating the pulse-pounding action, Sakamoto heavily insisted that Other M only use the singular Wiimote. Like not even with the nunchuck, just the Wiimote by itself. A 3D game you controlled like an NES game to keep things simple, and it's like, I get that, you don't want to risk overwhelming the players, but I think that philosophy goes out the window when you're creating an action game in a 3D space. Control and accessibility should not be compromised for the sake of artistic integrity, unless that was the entire point of the game, and that's subjective, so let's leave it at that. But the simplified control scheme, as dumb as it sounds on paper, I think Team Ninja made it work. Yes, it certainly could have used an analog stick and an extra button here and there. Movement is fine, buttons are responsive, things work as intended in this game, and it feels weird at first, but you warm up to it fast. It's not perfect, shit, it's not even that great, but it's good enough. My real sour point is the first person stuff. You have to point the Wiimote towards the screen to enter FPS mode to either scan something for story progression or to shoot missiles. Yeah, that's the only way you can shoot missiles, and they pack a lot of punch as they usually do. But it never gets any less clunky and awkward having to shift Wiimote positions to switch weapons and going for the kill. Without a doubt the worst thing about Other M's combat. Control was one thing, the story direction was another, and this was also something Sakamoto wanted full control over, and well, results may certainly fucking vary on that, wouldn't you say? Oh god, this fucking story. Well, we should probably get into the nitty gritty now, and before I begin, there's something I wanted to discuss real quick. Now, ever since I made it known that I was heading back into Other M for a proper Versus video, man, I can't tell you how many times I was told about how things were lost in translation when Other M's story was dubbed in English and how the story ultimately suffers from it. And look, if this were any other game where the localization efforts clearly massacred a writer or director's original intention, I would agree. In fact, that was sort of the case in Metroid Fusion, as some of you told me, where the corrupt Federation officials that wanted to create Metroids and capture the X-Parasites for study was in fact only a part of a rogue faction within the Galactic Federation, and not the Galactic Federation as a whole, as it was implied to be in English. That's a pretty important distinction to leave out, certainly makes the beginning of Dread less confusing. I understand that sometimes things get muddied in the waters when translating a story from one language to another. But here's the thing about Other M. Yoshio Sakamoto directed the English translation and the English dub. Yes, despite not speaking the language very well himself, he was adamant on directing the English translation anyway. You wanna know why Samus sounds like Alexa with a low battery? All Sakamoto, baby, it's what he wanted. I feel most times I was told about how the Japanese translation made things a little better for the story. It wasn't for the sake of getting more out of Other M's narrative, but to negate any criticisms Other M's story received on the English side, which, I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way. The English dub, words and all, is what Sakamoto wanted, and it's what he gave us. I can't just ignore that because it's better in Japanese, and I'm sure it is. Maybe. A lot of Other M's problems exist across both translations, let's not kid ourselves here, but to completely disregard the English side is just foolish. I will be commentating on the story through its English translation for the record, and if you're worried about me being an overly negative Nancy about this whole thing, don't worry, I'm not gonna be. Honestly guys, I'm gonna be more of a ambivalent Agnes, because the story is a whole bunch of fucking nothing. Set between Super Metroid and Metroid Fusion, Metroid Other M chronicles the adventures of Samus Aran as she answers a distress beacon sent by the Bottle Ship, a humongous research station much like the BSL station in Fusion where a bunch of creatures are kept for study. But also like the BSL station, something sinister brews within its steel walls, but it's not parasites this time, it's man. Okay, so here's the 411. Samus answers the distress call and heads to the Bottle Ship. She gets there and discovers that a squadron of Galactic Federation troops have also answered the distress call, being led by Commander Adam Malkovich, Samus' former commanding officer during her days in the Galactic Federation. Only looking less like an AI this time around, good on him. Samus insists on helping the platoon explore the station to see what caused the distress signal, and Adam agrees but demands that Samus follow his every order for a successful mission, and that she can only use certain weapons when he authorizes them, as Samus' arsenal can be incredibly dangerous. Samus agrees by deactivating all of her most dangerous weapons like power bombs, and even goes the extra mile and deactivates all of her defensive upgrades like the Varia and Gravity Suit that do nothing but protect Samus because hey, let's go the distance in trying to win back Adam's good graces, you fucking idiot. The rest of the story, I kid you not, is one part soap opera, one part murder mystery, and another part conspiracy? It's all over the place, with none of it getting any proper closure. It's soon revealed that the Federation, or at least a rogue faction in the Federation, is making bioorganic weapons, which is a big no-no in Federation law. To make matters worse, those same people have sent one of their own to infiltrate Adam's platoon and act as a saboteur, slowly killing off members of Adam's squad one by one to cover up their work done here. He's later given the nickname The Deleter. No, bad Samus, that's how you get attached to them. And for the record, if you're wondering why this secret Black Op project sent out a very public distress signal, it's because the experiments ultimately got out of hand and someone inside said, shit, something's gotta give here. and that person was Madeline Bergman, one of the ringleaders of the BOW program. But turns out this wasn't Madeline Bergman, but this was Madeline Bergman, and that this person, later named MB, was a sophisticated AI program created to mimic the brain patterns of Mother Brain and control the BOWs through telepathy as Mother Brain did in Planet Zebes. But MB would later develop a soul and yearn to be treated more as an AI, which the ringleaders decided was bad for business and wanted to shut the program down. But MB rebelled and caused all the experiments inside to go apeshit, kickstarting the plot of Other M. One of those experiments, in fact, was a recreated Ridley made from the remnants of his DNA scooped off of Samus' suit after her last encounter in Planet Zebes. Another thing they scooped out of Samus' suit? Metroid DNA, for they are also recreating Metroids that are also invulnerable to the cold, except, oh, wait a minute, no they're not, I just froze that one just fine, and considering the Omega Metroid infusion is weak to the Ice Beam, I guess that was just a straight fucking lie. Look, the general plot of Other M is bare bones as all hell. It's more about the themes, for as inelegant and heavy-handed as I think they're handled. Did you catch the maternity themes? Samus's fixation on the baby Metroid that saved her life, Madeline Bergman's mother and daughter relationship with MB, the fact that the station is called the Bottle Ship, how Metroid Other M's acronym is MOM, or how Other M can be arranged to spell mother. Yeah, I think you get it. But in the end, does anybody really give a shit about anybody in the story? It's so scattered by unfocused characters in unfocused subplots. Adam and Samus is nothing but one-sided melodrama on Samus's end. The deleter plot gets no proper conclusion, it's just quietly dropped after MB enters the scene, and while it's pretty much implied that it was James, the dude with the evil mustache, it just makes everyone in Adam's platoon feel that more pointless and unnecessary. They're given names, that's it, and besides Lyle's fear of bugs and his conservative way of dealing with it, that's it. These characters are nothing much. All except Anthony, a character I legitimately like, and one I would like to see return at some point in Metroid's future. He's good chums with Samus, supports her endeavors, has a positive vibe altogether. I don't know, are we sure this isn't what Adam was originally supposed to be? Samus describes the dude in Fusion as the perfect military mind, someone she deeply respected. And if Adam had all the qualities Anthony did in Other M, shit, I'd buy that in a heartbeat. But no, the Adam here is just a stone-faced bore. Those who read the manga will recall Adam being a stern but understanding authority figure that helps Samus prepare for her venture into Planet Zebes. They even have some playful banter when Samus charges extra for a bounty, all while she's decked out in her Carmen Sandiego attire as a flex. Admittedly, there wasn't much there, but they were clearly on good terms as Samus became a freelance bounty hunter. This game says, actually, no, because in one of the game's many moments of flat-out disregard in the manga, which I should stress was an official tie-in to Zero Mission, goofy canon or otherwise, it's shown that Samus originally left Adam and the Galactic Federation on bad terms after an incident involving Adam's brother getting killed while on a rescue mission. Though Adam did what was ultimately best for everyone's safety, Samus didn't originally see it like that and left in what's basically an angry schoolgirl huff. I'm going to assume this left Adam incredibly bitter because despite Samus's inner monologues painting Adam as this father figure Samus never truly got to have, I'm sorry, Grey Voice. Throughout this whole game, Adam comes off as someone who doesn't acknowledge Samus as anything other than a soldier to command. And it really is a one-sided affair on this whole thing. Samus is so fixated on her previous relationship with this dude and his potential thoughts of this investigation, and okay, clearly, they have a history, but we never get Adam's side of it. These two spend little to no time interacting besides basic ass mission control, and they had plenty of opportunity to do so. It's established early on that interference in the bottle ship is blocking communication between the troops, all except for Samus, who can still communicate with Adam. You'd think they would take this opportunity to give Adam and Samus some one-to-one conversations, maybe go into their split, Adam's past, Samus's past, fucking anything. But no, Adam just uses the comlink to give Samus orders, her next point of interest, and to authorize different weapons when it's convenient. It's fusion, but lesser, given Adam's greater prominence. He doesn't say or do anything about the potential traitor in his squadron, it's just silence. And while you could argue this was intentional to lay on the suspense for the player, maybe Adam's secretly the puppet master behind everything, it's later shown that that isn't the case, so in retrospect, it just makes Adam look extremely incompetent. If this is the dude Samus calls the perfect military mind, man, I don't see it. This scene right here is the only time they have some sort of heart-to-heart together, but it's right before Adam sacrifices himself in a moment that is not as emotional as intended because it is not earned. I do not care for this man, and the only reason this scene is even possible is because Adam shot Samus in the back while she was in front of a fucking Metroid that was on the attack. What does she see in this guy? Samus spends most of her scenes inner monologuing, and not even about herself, but about Adam and the baby Metroid from Super, and the language is so theatrical. She doesn't do much of anything in this game's story. I mean, yeah, she fends off creatures, she explores the stations, but her role, her impact, is so minimal. It's not her that solves the BOW conspiracy, the Federation does that. She doesn't resolve the Deleter subplot, MB does that off screen. It's not her that kills Ridley, the Queen Metroid does that off screen. And it's not her that stops the secret Metroid project, Adam does that off screen. It's like she's only here to follow orders and bear witness to the evils of man, and maybe it's just me, but it's so tiring and dull, and the whole authorization thing for weapons and protection just makes her look so fucking stupid. I get wanting to turn off the super dangerous weapons until absolutely necessary, but I don't get turning off defensive upgrades like the Various suit, and I don't get why Samus doesn't have enough sense of self-preservation to turn it back on when it is clearly needed, or why Adam doesn't do the same. Shit, he tells Samus to turn the ice beam back on and not the Various suit when you already traveled any superheated hallway. The Sector 3 section is so infamous because of that shit. It's clear that the area is hot, but you got this dumbass running through it without turning her Various suit on multiple times, and you got this dumbass telling her not to turn the suit back on immediately despite the comm systems working just fine. Terrible story and gameplay integration. I am shocked this got the green light, even with Sakamoto wanting everything to be in his design. And later when Adam is MIA and Samus has to cross this large chasm, so she self-authorizes the space jump and screw attack like it's a moment of empowerment. No, I'm sorry, that was also not earned, because this dipshit had to be told to turn on her suit before she was cooked. This plot is also just Fusion's plot, but again, right? Obviously there's no parasites, but a research station with different sectors housing different ecosystems for different life forms, a faction of the Federation secretly working on BOWs with Samus doing what she can to stop it. That's just Fusion again. Very weird for this interquel to recycle elements from its future sequel. In fact, kinda had said this so many times throughout the years, but I mean it every single time. I don't understand why this game had to be set between Super Metroid and Metroid Fusion. It should have been an origin story set before the first game. Yeah, you would have to rework a couple of things like the whole MB thing and the Metroid stuff, but I think it would have worked better if it was set earlier in Samus' career. It should have been an adaptation of the manga, because a big reason why certain things in this game's story doesn't work is because of its time frame and its utter disregard of past events. True, this is the first time in the games proper where so much time is spent on Samus as a character and her backstory, but it goes from 0 to 100 in establishing shit that just wasn't there previously in the games. Her relationship with Adam, her feelings about the baby Metroid, her utter disdain and fear of Ridley. If this is truly what Sakamoto wanted Samus to eventually become, it should have been done in earlier games, but it wasn't, and it makes certain scenes harder to swallow as a result. And you can't tell me it wasn't possible in earlier games because of limited technology, because RPGs and Ninja Gaiden would love to know your location. These games have demonstrated that as early as the 80s, you could tell stories with something as primitive as the NES. Hell, there was an opportunity to do it in Zero Mission, the remake of the first game that wanted to flesh out Samus' origin as a hardened Chozo warrior. But they did just about nothing there either, probably because they figured the manga did all the heavy lifting already. Also, the Chozo, they are not even mentioned once in Other M's narrative. Samus is talking about how Adam was like this father she never had, but I'm like, hello? You had Grey Voice? You had the Chozo. It's so weird how this game just completely ignores her upbringing from the bird people. Who is this version of Samus? A glorified, borderline submissive Barbie doll so desperately yearning for the approval of her former CO, made to appeal to a dwindling Japanese market that didn't care for the Metroid franchise then, and after this game, certainly didn't care for the series afterwards. Considering its budget, this game bombed big time, even for Metroid standards. Again, Metro was never one of Nintendo's largest IPs, but the game barely managed over 500,000 copies before holiday season of its release year, and it wasn't long before the game was going for bargain bin prices at your local GameStop. In fact, the copy I hold here I got for $5 not too long after I traded my original copy shortly after my first experience. This game left me very bitter back then, but looking back, that was more in response to its terrible story. Because as a game, Metroid Other M, and I really mean this, it's fine, especially in future playthroughs where you can skip the cutscenes. It's certainly more action-oriented than before, but a lot of Samus's arsenal from here is back and utilized in a pretty fun way. Except for missiles, I'll say it again, not a fan of needing to point the Wiimote towards the screen to use them. They hit hard, they're functional, but not very fun to utilize in the heat of the moment. But her basic beam cannon, it takes down enemies big and small, and her charge shot more than makes up for your potentially shaky aim. Though Samus will auto-aim to the closest target because of the game's limited control scheme, it's sort of a necessary evil. But I didn't find it screwing me out of a potential kill because it's kind of hard for Samus to die in this game with her new Sense move. It's a dodge roll you can perform whenever something hazardous approaches Samus, but all you gotta do to perform it is tap the D-pad in any direction before Samus gets hurt, meaning you're likely activating it by complete accident most of the time. It never feels graceful, but it does work, and because it's so easy to activate, it works a little too well. It makes combat with a lot of creatures almost brain dead on normal difficulties. But you can still make combat a little more engaging thanks to some nifty combat maneuvers you can execute on certain enemies, like hopping on top of them and giving them some point-blank love, or getting them in a chokehold and blasting their fucking face in. The lethal strike, I think it's called, and when utilized correctly, it's always great to see in action. And it makes me wonder what kind of ways can I kill the next enemy before resorting to the classic missile or power bomb, which doesn't give a fuck about anything. What sort of kills combat, though, is that there isn't much point to it besides mandatory encounters, because otherwise enemies don't drop health or ammo. You instead have to rely on the save stations to fully replenish your resources, which there are plenty of in defense of the game. Shit, the game won't even let you progress to the next room without using the save station at all. They hold your hand so tightly in this game. Outside of save stations, you have this concentration maneuver where you tilt the Wiimote up to refill your missiles and even some health when you're in critical condition. Now, refilling missiles with concentration, I actually don't mind that. I kind of fuck with the idea that Samus can just willpower some missiles back into her gun, as nonsensical as that sounds. But needing to be in critical condition to restore some health really makes me think they should have just had enemies at least drop some health to compensate. Like this right here, this is not fun in the middle of a fight. In some rooms, killing all enemies will reveal the hidden item in that area, so if you're going for 100%, then you have some incentive. You can even go into first person mode and mark items on your map that you can't reach just yet for future reference. But since I never cared about fully completing Other M, these aren't very enticing perks. What I was shocked to see coming back to this game was, despite its linearity, and it is super linear, more so than Fusion if you can believe it, there was still a decent amount of exploration you can do to get energy and missile expansions for your arsenal. I know I just said I don't care about getting all the items, but that doesn't mean I can't acknowledge the solid level design. Though picking up items doesn't come with the classic pickup jingle, it's sort of this cold, depressing... I was genuinely surprised to see my initial curiosity satiated by exploring rooms and areas like I would in other Metroid games. Using the morph ball and bombs, wall jumps, or kick climb as the game calls it. What is that name? The speed booster and shine spark, incredibly cool to see in action in this game. You feel like a fucking bullet train. Goodness, the space jump and screw attack are so good here as both a means of exploration and combat. Watching enemies that gave you trouble earlier just fucking exploding into space dust is liberating. But missiles, energy tanks, and pieces of energy tanks make up for most of your collectible items, because as for your standard upgrades and tools, well, you already got most of them, so there's never that gratifying feeling of discovering a new Chozo statue and getting a new item. Instead, you'll just unlock the item when the story says it's time to use it because of Adam's authorization. And in essence, it isn't that different from just getting to a certain point in other games and finding a new upgrade and immediately putting it to use. But it being so heavily linked to the story just removes that sense of wonder you get from getting these items yourself. And as I mentioned earlier, it makes certain parts of the story progression feel that more idiotic. A couple of times you'll get a new toy to play with that I guess Adam doesn't care about authorizing, but they don't have the same zing as discovering other power-ups, despite the upgrades in question being quite useful. The diffusion beam adds a scatter effect to your charge shot, making your explosive beams even more explosive. It's great. And the Seeker missile, returning from Metroid Prime 2, is still the Seeker missile from Metroid Prime 2, and I don't like using it. Also, not a fan of the mandatory walking segments. You're running around exploring rooms and suddenly you find Samus going, alright, my legs hurt, let's slow it down. It's in service to the story, yeah, but since I hate the story, and especially on repeated playthroughs, these are just slow and plotting sections that I wish I could skip over. Some have a good sense of humor, though. I like the Excel charge you can find in the women's bathroom, and I don't know why, but seeing this employee lounge makes me laugh. It's like, who broke into the vending machines and scattered the items like an asshole here? Was it the deleter? Did they not have James' favorite brand of chips? What a prick. Considering we're over 10 years removed from its initial release and how dirt cheap the game goes for nowadays, I think Metroid Other M is fine and worth your time. It's better than I remembered, actually. Controls are limited, but responsive. The upgrades are fun to use. It looks fucking fantastic for the Nintendo Wii, as much as I despise the narrative, you know. The presentation is still damn good. It's just fuck this story, man. And on your first playthrough, you can't skip cutscenes, so you're in it for the long run. And some of these scenes run pretty fucking long, almost Metal Gear long. It's like the antithesis to the standard Metroid experience. But English or Japanese, maybe you can find more to the story than I did. You'll never convince me that it's good, so save your comments on why I'm wrong. I won't read them. Please don't waste your time. At the end of the day, you be the judge. Metroid Other M is a good game buried under a whole bunch of bullshit. I feel like I didn't even cover half of the developmental process, but I can plug someone who did go deeper. Catch my bud the Golden Bolts video on Metroid Other M Death by Ambition. Yours truly even makes a cameo as the voice of Sakamoto. I think I did a pretty decent job. But no, it's a great video just to have in the background. My man goes deep into the developmental process of Other M and how Sakamoto's vision might have been too ambitious for the game's own good. I hope everyone here in America has a wonderful Thanksgiving. I'm gonna go fill my face full of regret, but then I can bask in the dessert that is my final video for this Metroid marathon. Metroid Dread. As always, thank you all for watching. Stay safe, wash your hands, wear a mask if you decide to go outside, get vaccinated if it's possible. Have yourselves a fantastic night, and take care.